Right up through the 1950s, divorce rates are low. Argue about exactly what they were, but they were low.
Yes.
Abortion rates, again, figures are hard to get, but they were low. Drug use was extremely limited. Illegitimacy was very low. The 60s take place, and there is an explosion of all these pathologies. Now, it strikes me that it's at least plausible to say that something happened right there, which is to blame.
Well, it's certainly at least plausible, because it did happen, and it's counterintuitive in the sense that you would expect that as the economic returns of people who had been suppressed grew better, so would their behavior become more conventional. But it didn't, and it's very widely encouraged. You pick up the front part of Playboy, and by the time you get page 13 or 14, there will have been a half dozen sexual engagements reenacted for you. And there's never in it a sense of, should I do it or should I not do it for other reasons, like she's married. By and large, it's simply a question, would it be fun? And the idea that there are no other criteria to consult is very definitely a trademark of this age, as it was.
Let me come back to you again.
This almost makes me want to revise my earlier statement and stick up a bit for fun for its own sake. I mean, as I say, I feel I'm here to defend the positions taken by the 60s left politically. But
you said
something can be said about sex other, I think, than that it's a very good machinery for procreation.
How do you explain the simultaneous, as Bill put it a moment ago, the simultaneous arrival of the pill and explosion in illegitimate births?
Insufficient pills and insufficient contraceptive
Other than
knowledge.
Mechanically, how
well,
do you
I'm sorry,
explain it?
that's actually it's a consistent
All
finding.
right.
If you take, say, a third world country, once you can raise women to the plateau where they realize that family limitation is in their interest, then a whole number of social pathologies become a great deal
Take
easier
a first
to tackle.
world country, take this country.
It takes a lot of time to inform and instruct and make available, always with the iron opposition, where available, of the Holy Mother Church and its allies, to get people to the level of what we would now call empowerment, where that's possible.
Now, let me.
But it's a battle worth fighting.
Let me try another one on you. You said a moment ago that these pathologies. I
Traditional
disagreed
morality,
with you.
traditional morality, I might say, in those circumstances, leads to overcrowding, misery, illiteracy, and disease, and titanic infant mortality, which I don't think is in that case much more morally defensible than an abortion.
Well, let me put it to you another way. Right up to the 1960s, the underclass, as the overclass, everybody had a certain traditional morality imparted to them by the culture, the ambient culture. It was in the air. And then beginning with the 60s, a different set of lessons began to be imparted. Now, perhaps the underclass, less educated, more economically vulnerable, was somewhat more susceptible to picking up these signals from the 1960s. Do you grant that?
Look, ever since Durkheim, there's been a big argument about what leads to social dislocation. Whether it's urbanization, for example, and the dislocation of traditional rural ties, why is the crime rate in America suddenly slumping, especially violent crime? Nobody seems to know why that is. We're going to suddenly say the 90s was so wonderful. The moral example set by authority and by the culture was so great that people decided not to use force on each other anymore. I think we should be very careful. I thought at the time that there were sordid elements to things like the Woodstock, 4 days in the mud, the attempt to go back to nature and all that kind of thing. I found a lot of that actually quite depressing and squalid, sure, but I don't know that it's I don't know that it leads in the direction you're trying to point me.
You know, it occurred to me it's terribly hard to go to a public school and expect to hear somebody say this is wrong. They might say it's wrong if you arrive after 9:15 because the class starts at 9. But to say something is wrong because it's something you shouldn't do, I can't find anything in the curriculum or in the practices that are acknowledged by the Supreme Court that permits a student to say this.
The strongest possible statement now is to say it's inappropriate.
I think you'd find that skipping Earth Day would be considered a moral delinquency.
Yeah, there are taboos, and those taboos, however, have to do, I think, with allegiances that don't really have very much to do with the governing of one's own behavior.
From taboos to politics, what came out of all the political turmoil of the 60s?